Hi everybody. Today I have a request from my one viewer, my best friend. Her name's Kim. She said, how about if you paint while you're in the kitchen? And I told her I don't like to paint unless I'm really happy. And I haven't been happy with the current news. But I'm not going to talk politics, so I'm going to try to paint and tell you how my career got started and how I went through the police academy and how I got hired and how I eventually met my girlfriend Kim. And today I'm painting horses in a field that I have a picture from on the internet. There's a computer over here and I've been working on it and trying to be in a good mood so I can paint pretty horses in the sunlight. So we'll see how that goes, and I'll tell you about how I got to the academy. So I put in my application, and I got accepted for an interview, and I went in for my interview, and they had a panel, and I can recall that the chief wanted to ask me a question that he had never asked anybody before. And he said, if I was having an argument with my wife and we got into a fight and I threw the dining room chair through the front window, what would you do to me? And I said, well, did you hit your wife? And he said, I didn't. And I said, well, I don't think I do much of anything because you own that chair and you own that window and you haven't hit your wife. So other than try to calm you down, I don't think I do anything. And I guess the chief of police, whose name was Casey, I don't remember his first name, I just remember his Chief Casey, he then decided to put me in the academy, and I was pretty excited. So I go home and tell my sister and tell my boyfriend that I got hired, and I have this green kind of military uniform that I'm supposed to wear after I get there, but the first day you're supposed to go dressed up, and I recall that I was dressed up and it was probably like 95 degrees in Nashville, and they put us all in a lean and rest, and everybody that's in the military knows what a lean and rest is. A girl from Ohio that's never been in the military really doesn't know what a lean and rest is, so I see everybody get down in a push-up position, and that's not a big deal because I had been in a triathlete while I was in high school, one of the first women I know that was in that sport. And I get in my push-up position and I can remember my hands burning on the pavement, and I had to say, "Sir, Officer Trainee Hughes, sir, reporting for duty, sir." And I could hear the sweat dripping off my face, and I remember we had a captain, his name was Bridget, who harassed me regularly about, I had really long hair all the way down to my butt, and he'd say, "Trainee Hughes, how would you like it if I cut all that hair off?" And I wouldn't say anything, but in my head I was thinking, if he cuts my hair, I'm going to take those scissors and stab him right in the eye. But he didn't cut my hair, and I didn't stab him, and I didn't go to jail, so that would have been a completely different story. I maintained my composure and managed to get through the academy, and I was the third fastest runner in my class. I remember Tommy Jernett and a guy by the name of Fleckenstein were faster than me, and that really upset me because I used to run every day at Percy Priest Park, and I would jump the horse jumps. In fact, I still have a scar on the top of my thigh from one of the horse jumps that ripped open the top of my thigh when I was practicing to be in the police department. And I was really proud of my ability to be a really good runner. And so I was always trying to beat Tommy and Fleckenstein, and what really pissed me off is that Fleckenstein used to smoke like 2 packs of cigarettes a day. However, I think he was an Army Ranger before he was a police officer. I'm not sure. Only Fleckenstein would know that. I wonder if he's still alive after all those cigarettes he smoked. If he's out there, hey, you're a really great runner. So in the academy, we used to run a lot of hills, and I remember we had tactical driving, and I really had no experience driving many cars at all, because being one of 12 children, you don't get an opportunity to drive vehicles. So some of my first real driving was in the police academy, which is not a really good place to start driving. And one of my friends, still my friend today, Shelly Kendall, was an exceptional driver. She was probably driving cattle at the age of 11 in a tractor trailer, and she could drive a car like she could have been on the F1 team. And I remember I really wanted to be like Shelly, and I wanted to drive like Shelly, and I would try to mimic what Shelly was doing, because she probably could have been employed at least in NASCAR. So I decided that I'm going to try to win the tactical driving, and we have a pattern down the airport runway at the academy that has the cone set up, and you're supposed to do 6-3, 6-3, weave your way through probably 35 cones. And there's a river that runs across the side of this airstrip at the academy. And I remember this guy named Hunter, who everybody called Moochie, is partnered up, and they have you in, you know, race car outfits and helmets and cars that aren't really expensive, because they know that we're going to screw them up. And I remember I looked at Moochie and I said, "Buckle up, Moochie," because I'm putting the pedal to the metal. And he looks at me like, "You are such an asshole." And I'm like, "Let's go." So I literally, out of the gates, the lights turned, and I have it floored, and I'm down to the last 2 cones. And then all of a sudden, my car starts drifting off the airstrip, and drifts so far that it goes into the grass, keeps going. We hit the stream and we flip over sideways. And I've crashed the training race car. And Moochie and I are hanging upside down, and we have our helmets on, and I can't stop laughing. I think this is the funniest shit that's ever happened in my entire life. And Moochie's thinking like, this girl has a mental disease. So I'm sitting up there hanging upside down, and they come and get us, and they're like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Fine, I'm fine, sir." And they're like, "Trainee Hughes, what in the fuck were you thinking?" And I'm like, "I wasn't thinking, sir." And they're like, "Get over here." And they're like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yes, sir, I'm perfectly fine, sir." So they give me this traffic cone, those big orange ones. And they say, "We want you to run this and say that you will not crash any more cars until we tell you that you are done running." And I'm like, "Yes, sir, Officer Trainee Hughes." So I think I ran like 4 miles holding that cone over my head, talking about how I wouldn't trash the academy cars ever again. So that's how I started off in the police academy. So I did really well, and I thought it was relatively easy. I was one of the few college graduates, and I don't realize that there's some shenanigans going on with the women and the instructors, but you know, I'm just trying to get through the academy and get a job and have enough money to eat. I'm not thinking about, you know, if who's having sex with who, you know, not my interest. And I know that I've done a really good job, and it's 2 days before graduation. And before we get out, they're going to give us a helicopter ride and a plane ride. And they take us on this magnificent helicopter ride. My first time in a helicopter. They take us over a bridge and under a bridge and over the trees. And they are making this helicopter dance like a hummingbird. It's spectacular. And I'm like, "Woohoo, can I do that again?" And they're like, "Sure, go get your plane ride and come back And then you can ride in it again. And I think it helped that I was a young girl, still single. So I was going to get a second ride. And I'm like, I was using my looks to my benefit because I used to be pretty back then. And so I decide that I get in line for the plane, and I remember myself and Mark Stoll. Mark Stoll, I thought, was the sexiest thing ever. Hey, Mark, I'm married, but I'm sure you're happily married too. And Mark and I are in the plane ride, and I remember seeing the pilot. I can't remember his name. Big guy. We take off, and we don't realize that the one door on this very small plane was not shut properly. The door breaks mid-air flight. I'm not shitting you. This is honest God truth. In fact, there was a news report where they interviewed myself and Mark. And the door comes off, and the pilot says, grab that and don't let go. So Mark Scholl, who's very strong, grabs the door, and I'm kind of holding Mark. We're both seat belted in. And I'm like, what's going to happen if we let go of this door? And the pilot goes, well, if you let go of the door, it could hit the tail, and then we're all gonna die. And I'm like, shit, that's not good. Hold on to that door, Mark. So Mark's got the door held, and I'm holding Mark and kind of holding the door. We land safely, and when we land, the pilot tells us that when the door hit his shoulder, it dislocated his shoulder, and I think it broke his collarbone. And I'm like, wow, that sucks for you. That's horrible. And apparently, because he Mayday call while we were there, the news show up and they interview Mark and I, and I'm like a goofy puppy. I go down there and I'm like, what do you want to know? And they're like, did the door really come off? And I'm like, yeah, but we held on to it. And they're like, well, are you going to ever fly again? I'm like, yeah, I'm scheduled to go back on the helicopter. Like, talk about naive and dim-witted. That was the first of many helicopter rides because I got to fly in quite a few in the FBI. So then we move on to graduation. I graduate. I do really well. I think I'm vice president of the class. We have a final race between myself, Tommy Jurnett, and Fleckenstein. If I believe I came in second instead of third, and I beat Tommy, but I lost to Fleckenstein, which really pissed me off because I wanted to be the first woman to win the race, which is I think like a 2-mile time test, which at that point in time I could probably run a 6-minute mile, which was really fast for a girl, but nowadays they're running like 4-minute miles, and you know, humans now are like cheetahs, and I was just this young girl that never had any athletic training that was trying to run. So we graduate, and we're gonna get our assignments, and I remember myself and Shelly and this girl named Passons get called to the chief's office. And I'm like, awesome. We're gonna be like Charlie's Angels, because I have brown hair, and Passons has kind of auburn hair, and Shelly Kendall has blonde hair. And I go in and they go, do you mind if we record this? And I'm like, no, do I have a secret mission? and they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, because I did so well at the academy. And they're like, secret mission? No, that's not why you're here. And I'm like, why am I here? And they're like, well, because people were cheating on their test at the academy. I go, how stupid are they? Like that they have to cheat on a police academy test. And I don't think they're serious. I think they're messing with me. And they're like, no, girls were trading like dating for test results. And I'm like, oh, well, I don't know anything about that. And then they start asking me questions, and I'm like, I didn't pay any attention. I was going to work. I had a dog. I was coming home. I had a boyfriend. I had no idea this was happening. I didn't care. I was like working out hard and taking tests and studying and training hard. I had no idea that this nonsense was going on. But like, I couldn't have been more green than a tomato off an early vine. Like, talk about a dimwit. Yeah, I could pass a test, but I had no idea that like sex in exchange for tests was happening. And that ends up as a headline news in Nashville, like, students exchange sex for test grades. And I'm thinking, like, I didn't do that. I was plenty smart enough to like pass these tests. And they had the pictures of the different academy people that got in trouble and the police officers that were brand new that got in trouble. And I was like, shit, I am never going to be able to get in the FBI with this kind of shit in my background. So that's my story for today. I'm going to continue to paint my horses because I am in a good mood. And that was the start of my academy in Nashville for Metropolitan PD and for Davidson County. And a shout out there to the officers. You guys are great fun. Joey Bishop, you were a great runner. There was, Shelly Kendall, love you. So many really spectacular police officers that I love out there still. And shout out to them and the department and all those cool people. So see you later.